Hello and welcome to the Interact event Hands on the Program Template.
To Dorota, what I understood from a member state representative, Alexandra Daimel, I understood that Council has reached an agreement on the multi-annual financial framework and is now approaching the Parliament with it. And I understood that this is then when the real trilogues could restart, but maybe Dorota, you would know more about all that?
Yes, hello everybody. That is correct, Bernard. Unfortunately, I don't know more. We don't participate in the negotiations and we don't know more than you do. All that I can say is that there are trilogues, political trilogues planned for the last week of October, one for the CPR, one for the ERDF regulation, and one for the Interreg regulation. And I had actually hoped when we started slowly planning this webinar in the beginning of the summer that by the end of September, I would be able to tell you something about the regulation in terms of what is important for this webinar. So that is the intervention logic above all. But unfortunately, we are still left with a lot of question marks. Above all, we don't know yet what the thematic concentration will look like. We know that the European Parliament wants all Interreg programs to invest in PO2, environment and climate. And also the European Parliament would like the cross-border cooperation programs to also invest in PO4, social Europe, employment, education, and so on. So that is not yet settled. We also don't know whether the Interreg specific objective will be compulsory, and if it is, then what the minimum level per program would be. There is actually a lot of there are a lot of open questions regarding a number of policy objectives and specific objectives. So I'm afraid we will have to work with what we know for now. Hopefully after these trilogues at the end of October, we will have a clearer picture. We know that the current German presidency is expecting to have the regulations adopted by February next year, which is a bit later than we had hoped, but this is what is currently the ambition. So once we have the regulations adopted, then the programs have 9 months to send in their programs. This hasn't changed. And there is also the implementing regulation on the program areas, which will also be adopted only when the other regulations are adopted. But of course, the Commission is preparing already. We are starting to prepare this regulation. It will be consulted with the member states during the autumn now. So I think you will have an idea about the list of programs well before February, of course, but I can't tell you exactly when. I just know that this is a priority at the moment. One more thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm sure you are all aware of this new specific objective on tourism and culture, which came with the amended ERDF regulation in in May, which provides a great opportunity for Interreg programs to finance tourism and culture under one specific objective. This is the good news. The let's say less good news is that we are not sure exactly what the scope of this specific objective is, and we are trying to figure that out for the moment. There are discussions ongoing between DG Regio and DG Employment. We hope to have clarity on that soon. I had hoped to have it for today, but that was a bit optimistic. But so that is another, let's say, important thing to mention as it's important for intervention logic. And I think apart from that, there is no sense in discussing other aspects of the regulation, because that's not really the focus of this webinar.
Thank you for this quick update. Then let's move on to the next slide. Luciana, please. We have already started in March. What did we do so far in this field? And we have also already, as you might know, we have already started in March with our first comprehensive package of recorded documents and videos and Q&A session on territorial. What did we do so far in this field? And we have also already, as you might know, we have already started in March with our first comprehensive package of recorded documents and videos and Q&A session on territoriality and functional area. This was then complemented in April by a Q&A session on policy objective 5. And we had 2 more events on the interpretation of ISO 1 and 1 on the interpretation of ISO 2 in June and July. So in this event now, we cannot go deeply into the interpretation of ISO and the policy objectives, but there is already a material available on our website. Please check it out. And finally, we also have produced an online course evaluation, what to consider for a good start to post 2020. Here you could also get some inspiration at this programming phase at where you are at the moment. What did we do as a preparation for this event? We recorded a video, which hopefully you might have seen. Therefore, we used the template, which was the outcome of the technical meeting on the 23rd of January, which included already some council amendments and also some proposed alignments with the CPR by the Commission. So we use this template also now. It's published on our website, and the template also includes references and to legal requirements and material which has been published by Interact or from the Commission so far, which might help you in filling in this template. An important notice for you, today we will not tackle details about indicator and intervention logic. So all that details will come tomorrow, and for, as I said also before, all details about the interpretation of policy objectives and ISOs has no room for, in this event. Therefore, we planned other events which you can find on our websites. Then let's start with some if we go back, some general questions which we have received for the recordings. We tried to include already a lot of questions which we have received from you in the registration. And one of the most frequent questions were how to understand the characters indicated in the template. Is it with blanks or without blanks? So it's to be understood with blanks, and the number of characters for the communication part should be 4,500, as it is indicated also in a Commission guidance. So the information which you currently find in this version of the template is not correct and will be changed to 4,500. However, as Dorota also said in the video, the this template is a quite stable version, or and you can start using this template in filling in your information. And another question in this context which we received is the Commission looking at drafts. Can programs submit drafts already beforehand, Dorota?
Yes, of course, and we are always happy to look at drafts. But there have been very specific questions about when you can submit a draft in SFC. Well, in structured format, you can only do it when SFC 2021 is ready, when the regulations are there. What you can do is you can submit it via SFC, the current SFC, but then it will not be in structured format. So, I mean, that's the situation. But we are always happy to look at drafts in any form.
Thank you. Then let's move to the next slide.
So I propose that we quickly go through the template in a leisurely manner. What you see on the screen is the structure of the template. And I propose that together with Dorota, we recap a bit the different sections and maybe highlight a couple of points which might deserve particular attention. So first, I understood from you, Dorota, that in autumn, the drafting of the implementing regulation will start, meaning that at member state level, negotiations about the program areas will be started. And I understood the key question is not for CBC programs, and mainly whether it's nuts free along the border or whether it's continuity, meaning that the program area of the current period remains for the CBC programs. But it seems clarity will come when negotiations are picked up during autumn. This is...
Well, if I can comment, I think it was said in the recording. The Commission proposal is NUTS 3 at the border with possible adaptations, for instance, to functional areas. But then in the negotiations, it has been added this sentence about continuity of the current period. So this is the situation for the moment, and we will propose a list to the member states, which they will then react to. And in the end, we will, based on that, draft the regulation. So this is all I can say at the moment. But we will expect member states to justify, especially if they want to enlarge the program area. We would expect them to justify why.
And then in points 1.2, 1.3, what we've been discussing before the start, there is 2 times forms of support, and that seems to be a bit tricky and not yet fully clear what it means in the context of field 1.2 or in the field 1.3. Could you quickly recap?
Yes, that is correct. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough time to clarify this because we spotted it quite late. It looks as if there was an inconsistency in the meaning in the way that the term forms of support is used in these 2 articles, in these 2 sections, or maybe I simply don't understand it. But so we will have to come back to that. But the current understanding is that in section 1.2, summary of main joint challenges, joint investment needs and complementarity and synergy with other forms of support, here we mean other programs, other funding. I mean, that seems quite logical. But on the other hand, in section 1.3, I would think that the definition is rather the one which you can find in the CPR, the Common Provisions Regulation, where forms of support are grants, financial instruments, and prices. This is for sure not the meaning in section 1.2, because that would be very strange. So, but it might be the meaning in section 1.3. And the reason for this confusion is probably that the Interreg template was updated in reference to the, or following an update of the CPR, of the template for the Investment for Growth and Jobs programs. So this is something we need to check. So I have to come back on.
Meaning we will provide clarification further on. And this commented template, which has also been published now, for us is a living document where we'll try to collect always the latest information. So, but it will change, and we will have a clear naming of the versions that you can be sure that you always have the latest version. Dorota, would you like to add something to section 1 at this moment for all colleagues? It's clear during the question answer session you can ask all kinds of questions, but for the time being we just want to do a quick recap. Okay, please then, Bessiana, could we move to? Okay, section 2, which I would say is then, since it's repeated for all specific objectives, will be the longest among all sections in the program. On indicators, we will discuss tomorrow. When it comes, then there is 2113. That's something new, that it seems to be a request for target groups only. In the current period, it was requested to elaborate a bit on target groups and beneficiaries. This time it's requested to elaborate only on main target groups. Anything else, Dorota, you would like to say on that for the time being?
Well, maybe in general that the current template, or the future template, is a bit simplified if you compare it to the 1420 template. So a number of things which were in the 1420 template have been deleted. So for instance, you don't need to provide information on guiding principles for selection of operations, which was a feature in the 1420 template. We don't ask for horizontal criteria. We don't ask for, there is no chapter on the reduction of administrative burden for beneficiaries. These are just a few examples. There might be more things, but the intention in general with the new regulations for the next period was to simplify as much as possible, which is the reason why many things have been deleted. But it doesn't mean that they will not be monitored in some other way, like horizontal principles, for instance. We will make sure to monitor them during implementation. But as for the template, it is a rather slimmed one.
And I would understand it such that it's a drop down, that you choose, in the end, you choose a policy objective, and then you have the full choice among the specific objectives which are part of the policy objective. But in principle, there is no room to customize specific objectives or give it a different wording for your program. That has to happen. If you intend to customize, in my understanding, it has to happen at the level of types of actions. So,
yes, exactly.
And what is also maybe of general interest that for the Interreg specific objectives, they are at the same rank as any other policy objective. And what about the specific objectives under the Interreg specific objectives? Could you just say a few words on that?
Yes, so in the Interreg regulation, Article 14.4, we have the actions listed for the Interreg specific objective. Better Interreg governance and a safer Europe. What we have done from our side to make things a bit easier and more pragmatic is that we will provide in the template a drop-down menu with these actions. And they will be treated as specific objectives, which means that in section, is it 1.3, or where you select your policy objectives and Interreg specific objectives, you will, for instance, select PO1, PO2, and Interreg specific objective 1 in the first column. Then in the column for the specific objectives, you will select a number of specific objectives under PO1, under PO2, and under ESO, which is then the actions which are now listed in the regulations. So this means that programs can actually, you can already program this. The actions will just be treated as specific objectives in the template, but nothing is changed in terms of wording or scope. It's, for instance, trust building, it is institutional capacity of authorities, etc. And this has been explained, I think, already in the seminar on the Interreg specific objectives, which was in June, or yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know if all the participants here were there, but Interact has provided guidance on this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, question answer paper is soon to be out. Could we move to the next slide, please? Okay, then we have section on the indication of specific territories targeted. Then there is no more section on TA, since it's a flat rate, planned use of financial instruments, and then the very technical indication, indicative breakdown by type of intervention, which is roughly the same as it's for the current period. I think here the interesting one is 2114, Dorota. Could you say maybe a few words on that? The indication of specific territories targeted.
Well, the intention here is that if you are targeting specific territories, which might be, you know, it might be a mountain area within your program area, or it might be an urban area, or an area where you see the potential for cooperation in a certain theme, for instance, in health, then you should indicate for each specific objective that you are targeting these areas specifically. If you do not intend to target any specific areas, you simply don't need to write anything here. And if it happens that your entire program is a specific targeted area, although that it will not be the typical case, but it might be in a few cases. You can then indicate the whole program, but that should not be the rule, rather the exception if it's really justified. Yeah.
And do I see it correctly? The Commission has no more interest to know any details about TA. So if member states take agreements on technical assistance, they have to develop it, a memorandum or whatever side document, but it's of no more interest in the program template to know any details about financing of TA.
Well, at least in the current version of the template, there is no room for that kind of information. So something might, you never know, things might change, but for the moment, this is the only place where you put TA is you put the numbers. I mean, you put the amount in the financing tables and that's it. There is no room for any explanations.
Then I think we can move on to the next slide. So financing plan. I found it pretty similar to the current period, except that in one case the breakdown now looks a bit different. But Dorota, would you have any comment on the financing plan? Okay. Then section 4, I think I got the impression the profile of partnership building and involvement of partners, the profile has been raised. It is now far more prominent compared to the current period. Do you share that, Dorota? Because it's now a section on its own in the template.
Yes, but I think we covered this quite well in the recording. So maybe unless there are any questions, I wouldn't go into it again.
And I think we can move on. Okay, then sections 5, 6, 7. What might be interesting is now there is the description of the approach to communication in the program is one of the compulsory elements. In the current period, the strategy was a compulsory document that is no more so, as I understood. And among the implementing provisions, what we've received a couple of questions related to the section on procedure for setting up the joint secretariat. And my basic understanding would be that it's of interest to learn about the institutional structure of the joint secretariat, about the employer to which whatever public body it is affiliated with, but maybe there are other things, in particular in external programs, which might be of interest when describing the procedure for setting up the joint secretariat. Could one of the colleagues maybe provide a bit of an explanation? We move that. Magali, you have to unmute in case you'd like to. It's the microphone.
Sorry, I had a problem with my
No
mouse.
No problem.
Well, maybe, so I'm speaking now on behalf of IPA CBC programs. Maybe Simona will want to add a point. I mean, here we would expect to see how the partnership principle has been taken into account in the setting up of the joint secretariat. That would be one of the issues.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody from my side as well. I'm very happy to see familiar faces, not only from the ENI CBC, also from IPA CBC programs. On the question on the setting up the joint secretariat, yes, I think that the joint secretariat will be a new feature for some of the ENI CBC programs, which do not have it at the moment. So we would just like to emphasize that this is an obligatory body of the program and very important. And indeed, what is important is to see how the participation of the countries in the program are reflected in the setup of the joint secretariat. So how is it ensured that the secretariat has the capacity to act on behalf of the whole program partnership in terms of, for example, language knowledge, if possible, representation of the countries, and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Simona. And then there is now.
Bernhard, can I just add
yes, of course.
the CBC programs? I mean, in general, I think it's true also for other programs. If you, in a big program area, you have regional contact points they should also be mentioned in this description. But this is nothing new. It's like it was in this period as well. Thank you.
And then there is section 7. And here I would like to pass the floor to Katja and to Dorota, because yeah, that's a tricky one.
Dorota, do you want to start? I start.
Yeah.
Okay, section 7 is the result of an update of the template. I think it was marked accordingly in the version you have all received. And section 7 is simply an indication from program side whether they're planning to use simplified cost options, or if they want to apply financing not linked to costs with reference to Articles 88 and 89 of the regulation. So it's a simple yes or no tick box. However, in case programs tick yes, this has consequences, because that means then that the Appendix 2 and Appendix 3 of the template will have to be filled. And I think with this, just leave it on the facts, Bernard.
May I add only that this is very important, that this section concerns programs that want to be reimbursed by the Commission based on simplified cost options or financing not linked to costs. This is not about the standard simplified cost options that you find in the regulation. This is not, you know, the compulsory simplified cost options for projects up to 200,000 or small projects in small project funds up to 100,000. That's a different article ruling that. So this is only in the case where, so this is not for the reimbursement of the beneficiaries by the member states. That's a different thing. For that, you don't need to fill in these templates.
Okay, a thing which has kept us busy for quite a time to learn about it, to understand it. And here I think it's important to get updates if you decide to fill it in, to try to catch the latest information. We are doing from Interacts a series of events on simplified cost options, and in almost every second one, the topic of Appendix 2 appears. So please, I can only say stay tuned to have the latest information, because it seems to us it's not 100% clear yet what to come. With that, maybe I would, yeah, then there are the annexes, and I think the only compulsory one I understood is a map on the program area, whichever format the map takes. Is that right, Dorota?
It's true that it's the only compulsory annex in the sense that it concerns all programs. It's always applicable. There is no format. There is nothing pre-designed in the template. So it's up to the program to provide its program area as it sees fit. The other annexes are only compulsory if you decide to use the different options, like the financing not linked to costs, or if you have operations of strategic importance, well, then you need to list them in Annex 3A, I think it is.
And in case a program would like to submit non-compulsory annexes which they think to be informative and useful to explain a bit more in detail whatever a missing link or any other particular issue in the program, are they free to do so?
Yes, just like in the current period, it will be possible. There will be a place in SFC, whether it will be called other member state document or other program document, I don't know, but it will be possible. But it's important to remember that whatever you think is really important and whatever the Commission needs to approve in its decision, needs to be in the template. So for instance, when you fill in the section on communication, all the compulsory elements have to be included in the section. I think it's section 5, right? And then you may add a whole communication strategy as a separate annex, but you cannot write in section 5 with reference to the annex, etc., because the Commission is not approving these annexes. So we are only approving what's in the template.
Mm-hmm. Okay, with that, I think we can close our quick walk through the template.
Thank you, Bernhard, for the quick overview of the different sections of the template. Before we move on to the question and answer session, we would like to share one example with you. If I remember correctly from the Slido exercise in the beginning, most of you indicated they have like 25% of the template filled out. And I think Oana, from IPA CBC Romania, Serbia, you are quite advanced with your IP template. Would you like to share your experience with us, Oana?
Yes, I'm here, listening carefully to what has been. Yes, actually, I would like to share my experience, as it has been extremely useful for myself as well in the past programming periods, and even now to share experience and with other programs. And I would like to thank Interact for the enormous amount of work you have put into developing tools and documents for helping the programs in a bit daunting times, so to say, with the pandemic and the legal framework not being ready, no financial allocations yet. And for us, keeping in touch with other programs has been of a lot of help, and Interact cooperation also much appreciated. With regard to our programming exercise, I can say that we have been a bit inspired or lucky. We have started the programming process in October 2018. And the reason we did that was because we decided at this time around we will not use external expertise, we will do it in-house, and it was a joint effort of the Managing Authority, Serbian National Authority, and a joint secretariat in Timișoara. They are even spending their birthdays today with us. Happy birthday, Emil, live, streaming live from the Managing Authority to the JS. This is the importance we give to programming process. Starting in October 2018, we have been able to conduct a real public consultation with stakeholders face-to-face in the program area, and we did 6 meetings during the... should I share my screen, or you will move the slides? Okay, great. We have conducted, as I said, public consultations with our main stakeholders. And a large part of our work was focused on capitalization, on what we have financed in the previous programming periods. We have a database on our program website with the outputs and results of the finance project, and the most outstanding project results, which could be either replicated or built upon in the next programming period. This took a bit of our time, but we are extremely proud of what we have, and I invite you all, if you have the time, to take a look at it and maybe get some inspiration for your programs, and why not for your projects. So we are more or less ready with OP. We are lacking, of course, the financial allocations, the program area, but money aside, we have the first draft ready. It was published on the program website for a final public consultation after being endorsed by the Joint Working Group for Programming. And we have finalized this endorsement of the first draft OP in August this year. And we are now in the phase of selecting strategic importance projects and large infrastructure projects. That as well has been a long process. We had a submission of concept notes up until March this year, and it's still an ongoing process, but I hope it will help us a bit with the M+2. So as you can see, there were so many things running in parallel. And this is why it was really important to get in touch with other programs and to keep an eye on what is happening in the Commission and in the Council with the regulations. We were pretty lucky that the Interreg regulation was closed more or less during the Romanian presidency. So we had a bit of legal certainty on our hands of things that are going on. But yes, there are still a lot of things to be tackled, and the major amount of time and effort for us was the indicators, and I understood that we will speak about this tomorrow, but yeah, just to highlight, because it's not everything rainbows, but also a bit of hassle with the indicators. So organizing the information per specific objectives, from types of actions to indicators, is a bit useful to understand the thematic concentration that is being asked from the programs in the future programming period. We did not encounter major problems, but it was a bit of an effort to to combine, so to say, the indicators that we had in the 14-20 programming period with the proposed list of indicators for post-2020, and to combine those indicators so that we will get, we will generate the baselines that we need to use in the system. And in parallel, on top of that, in parallel, we have been drafting the methodology for the performance framework so that the correlation between the output and results indicators would be clear, and the document would flow flawlessly, we hope. I must say that at this point we don't have a feedback, or yeah, we have a feedback because we are pretty lucky to have Kirill Diamanopoulos as our desk officer, and he has been very active in our joint working group, and I thank him here as well for his involvement and dedication to the programming process. But we don't have an official feedback on our program, so or on our methodology for indicators, so it is a bit of reluctancy. I can share, of course, everything, not only information here today, but also documents. But still, I am not sure that things are perfect or going into the right direction still. But so far, nobody complains, so maybe it's a good sign. The other thing I wanted to mention, that we approach the indicators in pairs, and this is quite an important aspect. For each output indicators, we assigned a corresponding result indicator, avoiding as much as possible cross-matching, like mixing Interreg indicators with ERDF or multiple output indicators. And this is quite an important aspect to keep in mind. Yeah, other than that, I don't know, I'm looking forward for the questions, I guess, in the second part of the event. And yes, you can always contact me. I think I have a further slide down below with my contact details for those of you who do not know me yet. Yeah, this is a bit more detailed information, but this I already mentioned, that it was a bit difficult to match what we had in the program in the indicators list with the current proposals, and to keep track with all the changes, changing the name of the specific objectives, changing the list of indicators. But yes, I'm more of a positive person, and I'm always focusing on the result and not on the obstacles.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for this quick run through your IP template. What would you say was the main difference comparing the last version and this version? What was for you the crucial difference in filling out the IP template, taking the current one and the new one?
I don't think there are so many differences or differences that would involve a lot of focus in the programming, in the programming process. But I do think that indicators this time around need a bit more focus from the programs in order to match everything and to have a thematic concentration and not to miss any type of action that would actually help you get the results that you want in the border area. This has been the major challenge for us, and it will be, because I'm still not sure that we are looking at the latest list of indicators. But for this, I have to say that Interact in the communities did a pretty good job, amazing job with the fishes for indicators. And that helped us a lot to understand exactly what is being asked under each indicators, which type of actions are supposed to be financed under the specific trainings with or without diploma. Are we able to rehabilitate the building or just to buy some equipment under the other indicators? So yes, I encourage you all to take a look on those fishes.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Then let's start with the first question, which was ranked top. Should the functional areas, as mentioned in 2114, even if there are no specific tools planned to be used there?
Well, I think it's, as I said before, if you are targeting functional areas specifically, then you should mention them. But you should not look, try to invent something which isn't there. It's not compulsory to fill in this section if it's not applicable to your case. I hope that's clear.
Okay.
And just to make it clear, 2114 is about specific territories and not, which is not in all cases exactly the same as functional areas. This is maybe also important because mountainous area or wetlands along a river are a specific territory, but you don't have to look at it with the perspective of a functional area. And for example, you take a policy objective on like greener Europe, climate change, and for sure actions might differ whether it's a mountainous area or a wetland along a river. So just, it's not exactly the same terminology.
Okay.
Then we have the next one on types of actions. What would you understand when under types of actions, Dorota? What would you like to see there?
Well, we would like to understand the intervention logic of the program. We would like to understand what the program intends to finance. So I would say if the description, if the only thing we know is that there will be pilots and demonstrations, in some cases it might be enough. In some cases you might need to provide some more information, especially if the specific objective is broad in its thematic scope. So you might want to say, for instance, cooperation between educational institutions instead of just saying cooperation projects. But it depends. It's always difficult to provide general replies like this when you haven't seen an example. If you see the example of the program, you see the intervention logic, then you can say whether the information you have, actually whether it's sufficient for you to assess what the program is planning to do.
Dorota, I understood always that, for example, the actions under the Interreg specific objective 1, that this would be roughly the level what is expected to be a type of action under other specific objectives. Would you agree? Because it gives you an indication of the very different nature of future projects you could do under the Interreg specific objective 1. Because that was...
could you give an example of an action under ISO that you were
Under ISO
planning?
1, these are these types of actions like mutual trust building, people-to-people actions, or enhance institutional capacities. So what is now under Interreg specific objective 1 labeled as specific objectives, but actually for me these would be examples for what is in other specific objectives types of actions.
Well, I'm not sure you could always make that reference because the actions under ISO are very often in reality sub-objectives, whereas actions under other POs might sometimes, could sometimes just be actions, types of actions, like, I don't know, under, let's say if we are in ISO and we talk about trust building and people-to-people actions, as type of actions, you could, for instance, say youth cooperation or cooperation between schools or school camps. I mean, you don't have to be that specific, but if you plan to finance a lot of school camps, you might as well mention it, but you don't have to. You can say cooperation between youth, for instance.
The next one is about section 6.3, apportionment of liabilities.
Sorry, I think Simona wanted to add something on this. Did you? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Dorota. I just wanted to amend or complement your reply that, for example, in the annexes to our joint paper, which we published in January this year for the Interreg Next programs, there in the individual cluster papers, which are equivalent to the orientation papers provided for the other programs, there we provide some examples of the cooperation types of actions. So as an example, you would say, for example, creation of joint for the PO1, joint or complementary research infrastructure, or creation of spin-offs, or on the entrepreneurship, for example, programs can do creation or support to existing clusters or networks. So there are some examples of what we can consider as cooperation actions, if that can help. For the, well, this was targeted to the Interreg Next programs, but it could be an inspiration for the programs.
Okay, then, yeah, to move on to the next question, which is about apportionment of liabilities. Anything from your side on that? Yes, please, Magali.
Maybe from the perspective, because indeed we thought that maybe these questions comes from transnational programs or well, programs on the external borders. I mean, here our line would be that this is similar to the requirements of the current period. So we would suggest to maybe reflect on the practice in the current programs and see if we can identify some good practice that can be then shared with the programs.
Dorota, would you like to add something on the apportionment of liabilities? For me, it was there already in the current period, and programs have had their approaches to it, so nothing new. Okay.
If I may, Bernhard, sorry, it's Katja.
Yes.
There is something new, and that concerns technical assistance. Because technical assistance is no longer its own priority, its own operation, so to say. It will come as a flat rate, which means also corrections will have to be carried over from project level to technical assistance. However, not very much most likely in practice, but that doesn't mean that programs, when programming, do not have to think about how this is taken up a level. However you decide in your program, the division of liabilities among member states for errors occurred on project level or systemic errors identified, you will also have to think about what would be the impact on the flat rate of technical assistance. We're very early stages in this discussion. And if you just allow one final point on this, currently we don't think there will be any actual practical implementation on liabilities and the apportionment of that for TA until the very program end. Because as TA is no longer in operation, but a flat rate, the irregularity article doesn't apply the same way as it does for operations. This is for the moment our understanding, but we will dig deeper into this certainly towards the end of the year, but also over in the beginning next year. Thanks.
Okay, then we have the next question, which is on operations outside the eligible area. Article 36, where to mention this if we wish to fix the program approach in the Interreg program. Who would like to take over that question?
I can go ahead if colleagues are fine with it. Dorota, Magali. Well, I think that relates to the question on the geography, because we have been repeating that this time round there is although you have the setup of the program area, and we were encouraging programs to stick to the core areas around the borders. There is this flexibility to involve beneficiaries from outside of the program area without any limitations. So I would see as the appropriate place in the template the section on 1.1 on the program area. I think that could be one way. Or there is as well the section 2.1.1.3 on the main target groups. I think that you can have an explanation if it is linked to a certain target group, for example, from the capital or something like that. I think that you can put it there. Or I think that as well under the 2.1.1.4, where you have the mention on the specific territories which are targeted by the program. I think that could be as well the relevant place where you can have a mention about why you would, for example, address certain area outside the program area. I don't know if Dorota, you want to add anything or amend, or Magali.
No, I think that makes perfect sense, Simona, and we don't have any policy on that you should put this information in some specific place. And as I think you said, Bernhard, this is only if the program wishes to provide this information. It's not something you have to. But I think it's about what Simona proposes makes a lot of sense.
Okay, then the next is a quite technical one. Table 8, section 3.2, total financial appropriations by fund. The question is whether it should reflect entire programming period or just the first 5 years. In my understanding, the 5+2 approach is gone in the negotiations? Because this, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Dorota, would you or would anybody say something on that? It's just...
If I may step in on this one. Hello, everyone. My understanding is the same as yours, Bernard, that this has changed during the council negotiations. The latest information that I know is that the 5+2 became 5 plus half. But as we see this fluctuating along with the negotiations, we wouldn't know at this moment to say something definitive on this one. We just need to wait and see what happens at the end. But at the moment, basically, you would have the funding for 6 years available to be programmed at this stage, while the remaining half plus half would come after the midterm review, would be allocated depending on the outcome of the midterm review.
So the current state of negotiations is you would have 6 years and the 7th year is divided.
It's 6 years if we speak in abstract terms. If we are to be very exact, is 5 plus half.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it seems to be, it's still under negotiations and not yet 100% sure.
And finances is a very sensitive topic, so we really need to have a bit more patience on this to have the clarity that we all expect.
That's where we all encounter closed doors when it comes to finance and MFF. Okay, what about sixth action under ISO 1? It doesn't appear. So for clarification, the sixth action under ISO 1 is other. And yes, please, Dorota, maybe you can say a few words on that.
Yes, I think it's other cooperation governance or something like that. Well, it's actually to reflect that in Article 14.4, when the actions are listed, the text says that the member states may do in particular or finance in particular the following types of actions, and then you have the different types of actions listed. So it's actually to capture this in particular, which means that programs might actually come up with some other ideas on cooperation governance, which are not exactly trust building or border obstacles, etc. And also, if you want to do different things under the Interreg specific objective, but you don't want to divide these actions into different specific objectives, you can also use this other cooperation governance as kind of a more general specific objective. So it's just to reflect the text in the regulation in a more pragmatic and practical way to make it easier to program.
Okay, anything to add from the other colleagues or so? And the wording is other actions to support better cooperation governance. That's the latest wording I found on that. Okay, then there would be the next one. Is it possible to have the same specific objective in more than one priority? So I understood the intervention logic one priority is one policy objective and the specific objectives are strictly linked to the policy objectives. That's my understanding, which would mean no, but please, colleagues. So is it possible to have the same specific objective in more than one priority? Who would like to take over?
I can start, and if colleagues want to step in, please, you're very welcome. So in theory, in practice, as Bernard said, one priority axis is linked to only one policy objective. And then within that policy objective, there can be one or several specific objectives selected. Now, in theory, it would be possible to have the same specific objective in more priority axes if you choose to put the same policy objective into more than one priority axis. However, to be honest, I don't see right now why this would happen. To me, it seems a bit of duplication that I'm not sure that it might be an additional complication that might not be necessary, because if you have the opportunity to include a specific objective in a certain priority axis, you can then develop it as much as you want in terms of actions and indicators, but it will be up to individual choices in the end. The only rule that's set out in the legislation as it currently is, as in not approved yet, is that one priority axis is linked to one policy objective.
Anybody would like to add something on that? Okay, then we would like to move on to the next. TA reimbursed with a flat rate, and of course the phasing out of the current program is the phasing in of the new. So the colleague is asking, in the first years the same 14-20 secretariat works also on the 21-27 program. Shall we mention this as continuity of JS in the program? Who would like to provide an answer to that?
Well, if I can, it's not compulsory. I would like to understand the background to the question. You can mention it, but I don't really see why. I mean, it's current practice that the secretariat of a current program works on the future program. It's allowed by the regulation. So I'm not sure I understand the context of the question. Why is this in the context of audit, or yeah?
We then exceptionally ask the colleague who raised the question to clarify the background or context of the question, or is it already answered? Do we get any answer? Okay, so options there, but we will move on. Then the next one, the matching between specific objective and the intervention fields set in the Excel provided by the Commission. Is it mandatory? Here I'm actually not sure about, because I've never seen that Excel table before. Maybe Irina, could you help?
Yes, I can take this one, and I will also ask my colleagues tomorrow to develop further the answer to this question, because I was not personally involved in the drafting of this Excel file. From what I know, the Excel file is meant as a helping tool for all parties involved in the programming process, and it shows our understanding, how we interpret the available information in the legislation. As the term mandatory is listed in the question, we are not enforcing this table. This is just what we see as being the most relevant link that there is. So that would be my answer for today to this question.
Okay, the next is if actions under the Interreg specific objectives are treated as specific objectives, should indicators be developed for each of them? I understood that the template is built such that the indicator section appears under every specific objective, but so it would mean yes, but please, Dorota, could you?
Yes, indeed. But I think in many cases, programs will be able to use to apply the same indicators for several types of actions or several specific objectives under the Interreg specific objectives. If you look at the common indicators for Interreg, which are listed in the regulation, they are very general. So let's say, I mean, some of them, like on cooperation, you can use, you can repeat under several specific objectives under ESO. But if you do something, let's say you do, you want to finance work on border obstacles and also people-to-people actions, then it makes sense to select two different indicators, of course, because you will have very different outputs and different results. Maybe Irina, you want to add anything on that?
Just to reinforce what you said, that indeed, if the action in the program template is listed at the level of specific objectives, then yes, it should have its own set of indicators. And as Dorota mentioned, it can be the case that the indicators are repeated between actions, or it can be the case that they are different between actions depending on the nature of the action. However, bear in mind that the targets will not be set cumulatively. If there is an indicator used across several actions, it should be each specific objective has to have oh yes, sorry, no, coming back. It would be good to have an idea of the outputs related output and results related to each action. This will not be available in the program template, because in the program template you will put the indicators at the level of the specific objective. However, it is it would be good, and we would recommend, if in the methodological document that accompanies the program template, these links between the outputs and each action that contributes to it are detailed and explained just to present the clear picture behind the ambition of the program. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is on section 2111, where the title says related types of actions and their expected contribution to those specific objectives and to macro-regional and sea-basin strategies where appropriate. Question is whether that implicitly could mean that all types of actions in CBC programs would have to contribute to macro-regional strategies. That's pointed out as a question, but maybe could you say a few words on the expectations related to that section of the program template?
Yes, I can maybe say a few words from the D1, let's say, point of view. So, as you know, we are dealing with the transnational cooperation programs, interregional cooperation, and the programs on EU external borders. Well, as I have already mentioned, the types of actions were usually mentioned in our border orientation papers, or for the Interreg Next programs in the annexes to the joint papers, so the cluster papers. So it's a level above the operations, I would understand. And on the macro-regional strategies or sea basin strategies, it is obviously, it's mentioned that where appropriate. So meaning if a program is covered, the totality of a program is covered by a macro-regional strategy or a sea basin strategy, then yes, it is appropriate to describe how these actions will contribute to the objectives of the relevant strategy. That would be from my side.
Would anybody like to add something on that? I understood the question as a bit anxious question from CBC programs, whether there is now the requirement to contribute in all cases to macro-regional strategies, which is not the case since there is the where appropriate in the title, and it's also clear that there are certain types of actions which will not contribute to macro-regional strategies. But Dorota, would you also like to say something on that, or we move on?
No, I fully agree with what Simona said. I think it's quite clear, and it hasn't changed from the current program, from the current approach, actually.
Maybe I could complement a bit because we were asked this programming period to contribute to another macro-regional strategy, and I do think there is a positive impact if the actions in the Interreg programs are more coordinated at the level of the macro-regional strategies across the territories covered by the macro-regional strategies. So a bit more coordination between the programs covering different programs covering the territory of a macro-regional strategy should help more on the impact side of our interventions.
Thanks, Oana. Then the next question is related to Interreg specific objective 1. And I understand the question whether acquisition of equipment can be financed under Interreg specific objective 1. Maybe who would like to give a quick reply to that?
Well, I can reply, and I will let my colleagues in D1 complement if you have something more to say on that. I think we have already clarified this in the seminar on the Interreg specific objective, that you may finance some equipment, some small equipment, if it's complementary, but it should not be the main objective of a project. or of a type of action. It's as long as it's complementary and you know, within some decent limits, then it has to be well justified.
Nothing to add. That's exactly our position.
Just that the question answer session has been recorded and is available also. And there the question has been raised and tackled as well. In the sense Dorota and Simona have now answered. Then the next one is program plans to have under one specific objective two quite different topics. How should this be inserted to the template? So I understand it a bit like expanding the range of the specific objective by providing additional information and how this could be done in the program template. Or should we ask for clarification in that case?
I think we received this question already from you. During the registration, some program raised this question, maybe a bit differently formulated. We discussed this with Irina, so Irina, please complement if needed. We would advise you not to repeat the same specific objective twice in the program template and in your intervention logic, but rather use the specific objective once and explain the two different themes when you explain the actions, when you justify the specific objective and the themes.
Thanks. Katja, this might be now one for you. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
In
Yes, of
case
course.
of TA being reimbursed as flat rate, is this
No.
needed to be indicated in section 7? Please provide a concrete example when appendix 2 should be completed, filled in.
Yes. Dorota, if okay for you, I start and you complement if you see that I'm lacking something. Okay. First thing is, I don't think you need to indicate TA flat rate in section 7 and then repeat it in annex in appendix 2 because it's not of your own free will. It's not your decision. It's a decision taken at regulation level, so there's no need to spend any time on indicating this. A concrete example for when appendix 2 is filled. It has been quite a long discussion on how to deal with this because we have, and I don't want to make it more complicated than it actually is, but we need to take into consideration two different levels. One is the relationship between the program and the commission, and the other one is the relationship of the program with their projects. And Appendix 2 only needs to be filled in case a program decides that they want to regulate their financial relation with the Commission, and that's the famous Article 88 based on Article 46, in form of a simplified cost option or financing not linked to costs. So that is really exclusively regulated with Appendix 2. This is also when the use of this SEO, which you are free to also use for the project, which also makes sense, would then be part of your approved program. And that brings some advantages with it. For instance, this simplified cost options, if we just stick to simplified cost options for the moment, cannot be questioned by your audit authority, or it would also not be questioned by the auditors of the commission services. So that would be a concrete, the frame. If, however, managing authority, a program decides to continue using simplified cost options only towards their beneficiaries, under Article 48 of the future CPR, then there's no obligation to fill Appendix 2. Maybe also a good moment to mention another limitation, and that means that Appendix 2 only needs to be fully and completely and exhaustively be submitted if we're talking about program-specific simplified cost option, meaning you have designed as a program your own simplified cost options. If we're talking about the ones that are ready-made, offered by the regulation, then certain parts of the appendix can be left out, and that is also clearly indicated in the template itself now, at least in the updated version. So just to quickly summarize from our side, Appendix 2 only to be filled if you want to regulate your relationship with the Commission, your financial regulation with the Commission through it, and fully filled, including the ex-ante assessment of your audit authority, only for program-specific simplified cost options. I don't know, Dorota, did I forget something?
No, I have nothing to add. That's all very clear and complete.
Okay, meaning we can move on. There's one on 1.3, which includes in its title, among other things, also the justification for the selection of policy objectives, indirect specific objectives, corresponding priority specific objectives, and the forms of support. And we understood forms of support here means grants, financial instruments, prices. And the question is there a need to justify that in detail, or is it sufficient to name the form of support?
If I can come back on this one, provided that our understanding of forms of support in this section 1.3 is correct, that we're talking about grants, for instance, and prices and so on, then it should be sufficient. I mean, I don't see why an Interreg program should justify why it's not doing financial instruments, for instance. But with just a small reservation, in case our current understanding of forms of support in this particular section is not correct, then we have to come back on it.
Meaning we will see to clarify it when elaborating the question answer document from this session as such. Then there is a question related to external programs. What about coordination with external programs? Does it appear only in the financial part? And is it necessary to describe the modalities of the coordination here? To whom may I hand over this question? Yes.
Well, if I understand the question correctly, I'm not sure what external programs means, but if the question is about where you should mention coordination, I would suppose it would be in the beginning. Is it section 1.2 where you have where you should mention synergies and complementarities with other forms of support? Here you could mention coordination, but it's not explicitly said that you have to explain the coordination between programs. This is another thing which was there in the current period, but it's not explicit in the program template. So I would put that information in section 1.3, but I'm not sure it's compulsory. This aspect of coordination between programs. Maybe we need to clarify that one as well.
Maybe if I just comment on that, I would agree with Dorota that it could go under the under the section 1.2, where you mentioned the synergies with the other types of support. I must say that we are, for the ENI CBC programs, we are insisting on their coordination with the other Interact programs, and also among the programs themselves. We take it as an opportunity that they are now coming into the Interact family, and that they can really become closer to all the cooperation programs. So yeah, I think that we would welcome if they describe how they intend to coordinate in that section, indeed.
Magali, yes.
Yes, I would suppose also that this complementarity could be mentioned also more specifically under types of actions. If some actions are complementing other forms of support, I would suppose that you could also have a specific reference to other programs that complement this type of actions. We gave some examples in the border orientation paper as well for the EPA CBC programs.
Thank you. Then the next section 5 on communication. So there is a lot of requirements in the title of the section, and here comes the question: how much detail is expected, which is a bit tricky. Number of characters is clearly limited, 4,500 requirements. There are quite a number, including where appropriate also budget and indicators. So we understood a reference to the strategy will not do. So what would you answer to that? How detailed section 5 should be filled in?
I think it's very difficult to say generally how much detail. I think it's only when you start writing everything that you find important and everything which is compulsory that you will see how many characters you reach and how much you have left. Maybe there is some guidance in the Commission booklet on communication. I don't know. I would check that first of all. And maybe if your program, I mean, the person who is responsible for communication could ask the question in the communication network, because it's a very specific question. I think the most important thing is to comply with the compulsory elements, that you really mention what is asked for in the title, but how far into detail you need to go is really impossible to say.
Anyone from the other, would anybody else like to say something on that? I mean, just quickly from the Interact program, when we asked our communication manager, he simply responded, if you look at what is expected, you definitely need a communication strategy, because it's very hard it's required to have objective target audiences, communication channels, budget, indicators. I would say it's a clear recommendation to have in the background a communication strategy, even though it's no more requirement as such. Then a very technical question: if colleagues would like to hand in a draft program including only selection of policy objectives, specific objectives, without any further text, would you give feedback on that? So in case you get a rather very short technical skeleton of the future program.
Well, I think we are doing this as desk officers on a regular basis when we participate in the programming groups. I don't know if Simona or Magali have anything to add on that?
Well, if I may, I would like to add, because we have received actually a draft program document with only the selection of the priority objectives and specific objectives. And our reply to that was that from our point of view, we think that the selection of the priority of the policy objectives and specific objectives only comes after the other points, which is the needs analysis or territorial analysis on one hand, and on the other hand, you have as well the regional strategies which come into pictures. You have, for external programs, you have as well the association agreements and the priorities which have been defined for the partner countries. So we think that if we receive only the selection of the policy objectives and specific objectives, we think that actually this is not a mature, let's say, document. We would like this to come as a result of a process which starts with the needs analysis. So from this point of view, we have replied that we are of course happy to accompany the program, but we think that the prerogatives are not yet there if they do not have the results of the needs analysis.
Could I just comment? I think I misunderstood the question. I took for granted that if a program hands in a draft program with specific objectives and policy objectives, I took for granted that some kind of analysis has already been done. What I meant was that we continuously look at draft programs or half programs, program intervention logic, for instance, where programs haven't yet filled in the parts on the joint secretariat and these kinds of things. But just the intervention logic part with the policy objectives and the specific objectives. And that's, of course, something that we assess on a daily basis. But of course, there has to be a needs analysis behind, a solid one, just like Simona said. So sorry if I misunderstood the question from the beginning.
No need to be sorry. Good to have all these clarifications. And I also wouldn't have expected that you get something without any needs assessment. Then there is one on section 6.3. Again, what are the essential elements to be included in this section? I mean, if I recall from my time in the CBC program, it was clarification that it's kind of a geographical principle where the partner comes from, and then the respective region or member state takes over liability, and then there are some pro rata agreements related to technical assistance. But this is what I recall. Maybe could somebody add a bit, are there any expectations, requirements from your side for this section?
Well, maybe I come back on these questions because I intervened earlier. I think, as I said, we would, since it's not a completely new element, we would refer to best practice in current programs. Now, I'm not completely familiar fully with this topic, and I would add maybe the elements that Katja mentioned in relation to TA. If Katja, you want to complete.
Yes, though I'm not really sure if we're talking about section 6.3 or the question above. Section 6.3 is really about how programs, how monitoring committees, how member states decide to share the responsibility, and that means the financial responsibility. This is always the worst case scenario. A beneficiary goes broke, money cannot be recovered to the beneficiary. How will this be shared in the program? There are many practices out there. I think Bernhard mentioned one, a geographical share, a question of how a percentage when it comes to systemic errors, meaning we're facing flat rate corrections on the program budget. Hopefully nobody has to, and so on. There are other practices like the program may decide that member states put money in a shared pot, and from this they will just cover irregularities. But it's really up to the member states representatives to decide, together with the MA, how those liabilities will be shared. Clear is it has to be shared, and that is what goes into this section 6.3. Magali, I wasn't sure, were you referring to the question of communication budget versus technical assistance budget in the template?
No, I was referring to precisely this question of liabilities, because you complemented earlier my answer with reference to TA. And
TA has to be put aside, but I think more important is really the question of how do you share the liabilities for the project partners for which member states share the ultimate responsibility as they are located on their territory. I hope that helps.
Without being impolite, I didn't go into the one above because for me it's rather a statement. It may be difficult to give precise figures on the communication budget. Clear, you have to first start calculating what is the 6% TA and then develop the budgets for the different activities you have to do under TA and then see. Then it's a question to...
Can I shortly intervene? Because we have 5 minutes left.
Yes.
So I would suggest that we take no questions referring to indicators and intervention logic, since we discussed that tomorrow. Maybe one last, two questions. Then
two ones. Two are quite nice because they go together. One to Irina, the methodology on, as it has been labeled, performance framework or indicators. Is the document mandatory? I understood it should be there because Commission should receive it upon request, but it's a clear advice from my own experience. You have to have it because the whole methodology on target setting, you have to develop it and store it in some place, because whenever staff changes in the JS, nobody will ever recall how targets have been calculated or other things. And in particular, it's required if you develop program-specific indicators, because you have to clearly set out the definitions, same as for any other indicator, any common indicator in the indicator fishes. You have to make clear the measurement units, the measurement intervals, all these details. But Irina, what would you say to that?
I will be very brief because, as Daniela said, we have a few minutes left, and I know for a fact that this topic will be extensively discussed also tomorrow by my colleagues. What you said, Bernard, is true. The methodological document, as it is stated in the regulation, it will be made available upon request. However, for us, just by seeing the program template and the table with the titles of indicators and values, we do not understand how those targets were calculated, what is the connection with the actions that were envisaged in the specific objectives. And there is no room in the program template where to fill in this information. And this is why the methodological document is very important, because otherwise we will not be able to provide any meaningful assessment on the indicator system that is proposed by the programs. What we would hope is that we receive this methodological document in the final, when there is a mature draft of the program, meaning financial data available and targets calculated. When this is sent through the informal negotiation channels, we would hope that it comes also with this methodological document. But more on this tomorrow.
So there's a clear request to submit this document at an early stage to make your system understandable. The map is also compulsory. Final question, any other documents which should accompany the program document? I understood this is then really up to the programs, but please, could somebody say a few words on that?
Well, the only thing that comes to my mind right now is the strategic environmental assessment, which is required by the regulation. Otherwise, I don't think there is anything apart from the appendixes, if they are applicable. Maybe my colleagues have something to add on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that, I do not recall anything else, Dorota, from our point of view. I don't think that there would be anything specific for the external borders. But Magali, correct me if you think otherwise.
No, I have nothing else in mind as obligatory.
There is the list of projects of strategic importance, I think, as annex to the program.
Yeah, for information.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I would like to close the question and answer session and hand back to Daniela.
Okay, thank you very much to all our speakers for joining us today. Thank you to Rota for answering all our questions, and Irina, Magali, Simona, thank you very much. We will try and sum up all these questions also in a question and answer document, which you then will find together with the edited video on our website.